The US spent $2.3 trillion and 20 years trying to transform Afghanistan. We built schools that crumbled, roads that washed away, and a government that collapsed in 11 days. Then we left. Now the Taliban is building something in just 3 years that threatens American interests across 3 continents, and China is already writing the checks. I'm talking about a construction megaproject so strategically explosive that it's handing the Taliban more leverage over US allies than any terrorist attack ever could. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to reveal about Phase 2's $1.2 billion expansion and how it cuts off 3 American allies will change everything you think you know about who really won in Afghanistan. This is the Kosh-Tepe Canal, and it's America's worst nightmare. Here's what's happening right now, 400 kilometers north of Kabul, while Washington pretends Afghanistan doesn't exist anymore. 6,000 Afghan workers are operating Chinese-made excavators 24/7. Carving a 285-kilometer wound through the desert. This canal is 100 meters wide at critical points, larger than anything the U.S. ever attempted to build there. The scale is staggering. The canal will divert 10 cubic kilometers of water annually from the Amu Darya River, irrigating 550,000 hectares of desert farmland. That's bigger than Delaware. Afghanistan will increase its agricultural capacity by 1/3, achieving food independence by 2030. No more reliance on imports. No more vulnerability to sanctions. No more need for American or UN humanitarian aid. Total investment, $684 million. The Taliban self-funded $100 million of this from domestic revenue. Let me repeat that. A designated terrorist organization found $100 million in cash for infrastructure, while the US-backed government we spent billions propping up couldn't complete a single major project without embezzlement scandals. Current progress, 73% of Phase 1 complete as of March 2025. Daily Earth movement, 45,000 cubic meters. Projected completion, December 2027. These aren't propaganda numbers. These are verified by satellite imagery and independent engineering assessments. And here's the part that should make every American furious. The Taliban is executing this with 80% less corruption than the government we spent 2 decades supporting. Money reaches construction sites. Workers get paid. Equipment doesn't disappear. One European contractor told me anonymously, in 20 years of US projects, we saw half the budget vanish into offshore accounts. The Taliban? They're actually building things. After $36 billion in American reconstruction funds produced phantom projects and ghost schools, the Taliban is proving they can govern. And that's exactly what Washington feared most. But here's where this becomes a direct threat to American strategic interests. The canal is choking 3 countries that matter to U.S. policy, and there's nothing we can do about it. Uzbekistan, a critical Central Asian partner hosting U.S. counterterrorism operations, is watching its $1.2 billion cotton industry die. The Amu Darya River feeds Uzbek farmland. Afghanistan is now diverting 20% of that flow, and during drought years, Uzbekistan could lose 35% of its water supply. Tashkent filed formal UN protests in February 2025, calling this a violation of international water law. The Taliban's response? We control the source. We're taking what's ours. Uzbek President Mirziyoyev warned that unilateral diversions threaten regional stability. That's diplomatic code for, we're considering military options. Turkmenistan, another U.S. partner in the region, is equally desperate. Their agricultural heartland depends on the same river. They've quietly begun constructing their own upstream diversions in retaliation, setting up a chain reaction that could destabilize the entire region. And here's the geopolitical nightmare. If water wars break out in Central Asia, guess who steps in as the peacemaker? Not America. We have zero leverage there anymore. It's China and Russia. Beijing is already positioning itself as the neutral arbroker, offering financing for joint water management projects. Russia, which has always controlled Central Asian diplomacy, is working behind the scenes to keep its former Soviet republics in line. The Taliban just handed Moscow and Beijing the keys to Central Asian stability, and Washington is locked out completely. But it gets worse. The engineering challenges the Taliban is overcoming should be impossible for a group we dismissed as cave-dwelling extremists. The canal crosses the Kizil-Kum Desert, where temperatures hit 50 degrees Celsius and sandstorms halt work for days. They had to blast through bulk highland limestone that shattered 6 industrial drill heads in the first month. The Balkab River crossing alone, a 2.3-kilometer elevated aqueduct, costs $120 million and is 40% complete despite monsoon floods that killed 11 workers in 2024. Security threats persist. ISIS-K has attempted 3 major sabotage attacks since 2023. In June 2024, an IED destroyed a $2 million bulldozer near Antkoy, killing 2 operators. The Taliban maintains 500-meter security perimeters with armed patrols every 6 hours. They're fighting insurgents while building infrastructure, something the US-backed Afghan army couldn't do with $83 billion in American military aid. Then there's the environmental risk nobody's discussing. Early test sections showed 15% water loss through seepage, forcing engineers to add polymer lining that increased costs by $80 million. If the full canal experiences similar losses, the project could fail entirely. But the Taliban isn't slowing down. They're adapting, problem-solving, and pushing forward. Here's what this really means for America. We're watching the Taliban prove that you don't need democracy, human rights, or Western support to build a functioning state. You need discipline, control, and ruthless efficiency. That's a dangerous message for authoritarian regimes worldwide. China is taking notes. Beijing sees the canal as proof that infrastructure, not ideology, builds power. If Afghanistan can stabilize through mega projects, it validates China's Belt and Road model over America's democracy promotion strategy. Chinese surveying teams assessed the canal's export potential in November 2024, eyeing rail links to Xinjiang that would integrate Afghanistan into Beijing's economic sphere. Russia views this as an opportunity to fracture US influence in Central Asia. Moscow has historically brokered water-sharing agreements in the region. Afghanistan's unilateral action undermines American attempts to build diplomatic relationships there. Every country that negotiates with the Taliban over water is a country moving further from Washington's orbit. And where is America in all this? Completely sidelined. We don't have a single ongoing infrastructure project in Afghanistan. The Taliban doesn't need American funding, American expertise, or American approval. They're building the future while we watch from embassies in Qatar. But let's talk about what happens if this project succeeds, because the implications are catastrophic for US interests. If the canal delivers on its promises, Afghanistan becomes food self-sufficient by 2030. The Taliban cuts off a major pressure point. We can't use food aid as leverage. International sanctions become meaningless. The regime gains legitimacy through economic success, not democratic reforms. Neighboring countries are forced to negotiate water rights with a government the US refuses to recognize. Within 5 years, we could see Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, even Pakistan formally recognizing the Taliban because they have no choice. They need water more than they need American approval. Afghanistan transforms from a failed state into a regional power, not through military strength, but through control of the one resource nobody can live without: water. The Taliban gains more strategic leverage than 20 years of insurgency ever delivered. China cements its position as Afghanistan's primary partner. If the canal succeeds, it proves Beijing's model works. Infrastructure over ideology, economic development over democracy. Every developing nation watching will remember, China helped build Afghanistan's future while America bombed its past. And most dangerously, militant groups worldwide see a new playbook. You don't need to win hearts and minds. You don't need international legitimacy. You need to control resources, build infrastructure, and force the world to deal with you. The Taliban is writing the manual for 21st century authoritarian state building. Now let's talk about what happens if this project fails, because that scenario isn't much better for America. If the canal collapses due to engineering failures or water loss, Afghanistan faces domestic crisis. The Taliban staked its legitimacy on economic transformation. Failure could fracture the regime, with northern commanders questioning Kabul's competence. But here's the problem. The chaos that follows would create another vacuum, more refugees flooding into Europe, more terrorist safe havens, more instability on China and Russia's borders, pulling them deeper into the region while America remains absent. If downstream countries face severe water shortages, we're looking at Central Asia's first modern water war. Uzbekistan has the military capability to strike the canal's infrastructure. A regional conflict would destabilize Chinese trade routes and Russian security interests, forcing both powers to intervene militarily. America would have zero influence over the outcome. And if environmental degradation accelerates, we're facing mass migration on a scale that makes Syria look small. 10 million Central Asian climate refugees pushing toward Russia, Turkey, and Europe. The migrant crisis that nearly broke the EU would be just the beginning. Either way, America loses. Success empowers the Taliban and validates authoritarian governance. Failure creates chaos that pulls our rivals deeper into the region while we remain irrelevant. This is what defeat looks like in the 21st century. Not armies retreating, not flags being lowered, but a nation we spent trillions trying to control, building infrastructure that gives them more power over our allies than we ever had. The Kosh-Tepe Canal is 73% complete. The water flows in 2027, and when it does, Central Asia will belong to whoever controls that flow. Right now, that's the Taliban, not us. So here's the question that should haunt every American. If the Taliban can do this in 3 years with $684 million, what exactly did we accomplish with $2.3 trillion in 20 years? The answer is staring us in the face through satellite images of a canal we never saw coming. Subscribe to our channel now for more unseen stories. What do you think? Did we lose more than just a war? Drop your thoughts below.